if you'll remember, we had a problem similar to this yesterday, where we had one side was twice as long as the other side. And so we did x plus 2x plus 2x, and we set it equal to 600 with a perimeter. But now this time we're talking about angles. But still the same thing applies. If we know angle 2 is twice the measure of angle 1, then that means which of those two angles is smaller? Angle 1 or angle 2? Angle 1 is smaller. And so what we want to do then is take the smaller angle and label the value of that x. Let's not use green, that'll probably be hard to show up. So let's call angle 1 x. And now if angle 2 is twice that big, what's going to be the measure of angle 2? 2 x's. Because it's twice as big as angle 1. Alright, so now there's a couple of different ways we can solve this. Do any ideas come to your guys' minds? We could. We could add all 4 angles. And what would all 4 angles be equal to? 6x. But 6x would have to equal what? How many degrees are in all? 360. So that's one way we could do it. We could say x plus 2x plus x plus 2x equals 360. That's one possibility. Does anybody think of a different way you could do it?
That's an easier way than that.
Probably. We also learned yesterday what? Consecutive angles are supplementary. Are these consecutive angles? Are they right next to each other? So that means x plus 2x has to equal, and you could do it that way. All right? Either way is acceptable. Let's just go with our first instinct. So let's call angle 3 also 2x. And this angle here is x. So we could say x plus 2x plus 2x equals 360. That tells me that 6x equals 360. And so then x is equal to 60. If you solve that out, you have to divide both sides by 6. We can find x is 60. Now, is the question, what is x? No, we have to identify the measure of angle 1, angle 2, and 3. So what would be the measure of angle 1? It is 60 degrees. The measure of angle 2 is 2 times 60, which is 120. And the measure of angle 3 is also 120. Because, again, 3 is opposite 2. Okay, so what kind of equation are we going to set up? Okay, yeah, good answer.
Will we set them up equal to each other?
Okay, are those two angles equal to each other? They are not, because those are consecutive angles. They are right next to each other. So what do we know about consecutive angles of parallelograms? They add to be 180. They're supplementary. So what we could say is a plus 5 plus 8a minus 5 equals 180. Now what is a plus 8a? 9a. What's 5 minus 5? 0. So those two are going to cancel out. So we're left with 9a equals 180. I would divide both sides by 9. So a is equal to 20. So the first question, what is a? A would be 20. Any questions there? Now we're going to substitute that a in to find angle G, H, J, and K. So if I'm looking for angle G, I'm going to plug 20 in here for A. So 8 times 20 is 160. 160 minus 5 would be 155. Next, if I'm looking for angle H, I would plug in 20 here in this one. 20 plus 5 would give me 25 degrees. Now next, what is angle J? Well, angle J is opposite which angle? G. So we know that opposite angles are congruent. So if G was 155, then J is 155. Angle K is opposite angle H. So if H is 25, that means K is 25. Okay, so we've got one more property that we have to add to our parallelograms. Here's what it says. If a quadrilateral is a parallelogram, then its diagonals bisect each other. So what does bisect mean? Cuts it into two equal pieces. So we could say here, the diagonals bisect each other.
Boy, take that AirPod out so you can focus. Advantages of good teaching.
So when we look here, I've got parallelogram, RSTU. And it tells me that the length from S to U is 35. So from S to U, that whole length is 35. And it also tells me that the length from K to T, that's this one here, is 19. Okay, so we know that these diagonals bisect each other. That means they cut them into two equal pieces. So the first question is, what is SK? So SK would be the distance from S to K that I've drawn there in blue. Does anybody have any idea? How could I find SK?
Divide 35.
Yes. 35 is the entire length, and if we're cutting it into two equal pieces, then SK is half of 35.
17.5.
So we could say that the distance from S to K is 17.5. Questions there about how to do that one? All right, what does the next one say? What is the distance from R to T? So R to T is this entire line there in green. Well, if we know K to T is 19, and that's half of a diagonal, then the other half would also be 19. So we could add 19 to it to find that RT would need to be 38. Or times it by 2, either way.
Oh, fractions, yeah.
So this says we've got a parallelogram GHJK. Like I said, it's important. Just label what it tells me. It tells me from P to K is 4. And from H to K, that's this entire distance. H to K is 2/3 of GJ. Okay? So what is the distance from G to J? I don't know. So let's say that the distance from G to J is X, because it's an unknown. And so now what would be the black line from H to K? It's going to be 2/3 of X. 2/3 of X. Okay, and again, the yellow part is just this little section here. So how big is 2/3 of X? This entire thing. Do we know what the length of that is?
No, 2/3.
So this part in black here, we found it to be 2/3 of X. Thinking about the yellow, do I know how long this entire line is?
If it-
Half of it.
It's 8. Because it's a parallelogram, so it's cut into two equal pieces. So P to K is 4, so H to P would also be 4. So that entire distance is 8. So here's what we have to say. We could say that the black section, which is 2/3 x, is equal to 8, which comes from the two smaller yellow sections. Now we can solve for x. And once I know what x is, then I'm going to know the blue line. All right, so that's going to be nice. So let's solve for x. X is being multiplied by 2/3. So I'm going to divide by 2/3. That tells me x equals, I think it's going to be 12. Somebody double check me with your calculators. Do you guys have a question? Are we confused? This one's hard. Okay,
We just have like no more fraction.
I wished.
Yeah, it is 12.
Okay, so now we know that the blue line, which we labeled before to be x, the blue line here is going to be 12. So the distance from G to J is 12. Now the question is, what's the distance from G to P?
6.
6, right? Because that's half of the entire blue line. And if the blue line is 12, then G to P is 6. So that has a lot of steps to get you to the final answer.